Jim Huddle, who was waiting outside the COVID-19 pandemic in an RV parked several hours east of Reno, can't escape the influence of his brother-in-law. There's the image of Joe DeAngelo, savoring late-night horror films, gripping his teeth with delight when the gore began. In a forced whisper, he'd rasp, "Look at that." There's the shock of seeing DeAngelo remove a gun from his trunk to scare two men away during a parking lot dispute. And there's the nagging notion that the flattened gold bars DeAngelo recovered from a garage hiding spot were melted coins from South Africa. Many years later, Huddle can't help but wonder whether they had a darker origin. It's strange that someone can be sweet and vicious simultaneously. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Thank you for joining us today. Today we'll be speaking about the most sadistic Golden State Killer who terrified California 40 years ago. Stick to the end and watch the entire video to get all the details. Also, remember to like, share, subscribe, and click the bell notification. Alright then, let's get started. On December 30th, 1979, he broke into the Galetta apartment of Robert Offerman and his girlfriend, Deborah Alexandria Manning, after committing hundreds of rapes in Northern California. He was pathologically precise. Law enforcement was aware that he stalked his victims, mainly single ladies living in one-story houses. In prior incidents, he'd broken into the house while it was empty to set up the scene, removing bullets from guns, turning off lights, and knowing the layout. That night, though, something went awry. Offerman managed to extricate himself when his hands were shackled. Police believed he assaulted the invader. He killed both Offerman and Manning. When police examined the residence the next morning, one item stood out. The couple's Christmas turkey leftovers had been stolen from the refrigerator and consumed. The murderer stayed for a bite. The man who murdered Offerman and Manning is still one of the state's most terrifying unidentified serial killers. His figures are difficult to comprehend. At least 12 murders and 45 rapes between 1976 and 1986. He was also known as the East Area Rapist, Golden State Killer, and Original Night Stalker. Victims were reported in the counties of Alameda, Contra Costa, Santa Clara, Sacramento, Yolo, Stanislaus, and San Joaquin. Like other serial murders, his career progressed quickly. Police believe he's responsible for more than 150 house break-ins. He most likely began small, peering through windows and breaking into empty houses. His misdeeds grew bolder as he grew bolder. He most likely lived in the Sacramento region, where he tormented residents from 1976 until 1978. He would sometimes go out night after night, targeting residences just yards apart to instill panic in the community. He developed one of his most horrible signatures during this time. If he chose a house with a couple living inside, he would sometimes first incapacitate the guy by binding him with pieces of towels or shoelaces and laying him face down on the ground. He'd take a stack of dishes from the kitchen and gently balance them on the man's back. The killer would warn the pair that he would kill them if he heard a plate drop or even rustle. Then he'd begin raping the victim. Since the Golden State Killer killed so many people, there's a patchwork of evidence, even more terrifying than the last. In 1979, a Santa Barbara victim told police that he left her in the living room and marched about the house, gazing through the kitchen and screaming, "I'll kill him, I'll kill him." According to one investigator, it was similar to a guy revving himself up for an athletic event. Victims reported that he occasionally left the room to cry in another section of the house. He occasionally mentioned his mother, wailing loudly, "Mummy." He frequently visited the kitchen. He halted during one rape to fetch himself a slice of apple pie. He took advantage of his victim's fear in another horrible way. He called their residence, sometimes years later. Numerous victims reported having an unusually high number of wrong number or hang-up calls in the days leading to the attack. Others who answered the phone heard heavy breathing on the other end. In one conversation, he said to a rape victim, "I'm going to murder you." The Golden State Killer obtained their phone numbers from previous break-ins. According to police, rotary phones in the 1970s had the house phone number. There's also a letter. The Sacramento Bee, the city's mayor's office, and the KVIE6 television station all received the poem titled Excitement's Crave in 1977. Even though it's never been proven to be the killer's work, many people believe it's genuine. A portion of it stated that Sacramento should make an offer. Making a film about my life will pay for my intended exile. I'd like to add the wife of a mafia lord to my file right now. your East Area rapist and well-deserved pest. See you in the press or on television. The case, which had long been eclipsed by more high-profile California killers such as Zodiac or Richard Ramirez, has recently gotten renewed attention thanks largely to the work of true crime writer Michelle McNamara. McNamara spent years researching the case and coined the term Golden State Killer. A book on the suspect was recently published posthumously after McNamara's untimely death in 2016. In 2016, the FBI and Sacramento law enforcement staged a press conference to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the initial attack to generate new leads. Evidently, with the 40th anniversary, this is the time we would like to take to affirm this convicted criminal who is presumably one of the most prolific, certainly in California, potentially in the United States, said Sergeant Paul Belli, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department policeman involved in the investigation. It is what police say they know about the Golden State Killer. He was white, presumably around 70 years old, if he's still alive. Victims said he was about 5'9", had light-colored hair, and was in good physical shape since he could flee scenes on foot or bike. There are several composite sketches of the suspect. However, they could be innocent bystanders in the neighborhood because he wore masks while doing his atrocities. He was wearing size 9 Adidas shoes at least one crime site, and he preferred victims from upper-middle-class or affluent neighborhoods. He stole engraved wedding rings, identity cards, and bespoke cufflinks from his victims. Richard Shelby, a retired Sacramento County Sheriff's deputy who was the primary detective on the East Area rapist cases, suspected the killer had married and had children. Shelby stated in 2001 he called one of his victims. It was either in 1990 or 1991. She spoke to him for a moment. She could hear children and a mother in the background. He served Rancho Cordova, Citrus Heights, Sacramento, Carmichael, and Orange Vale from May 1976 through the summer of 1977. He was seen in Stockton in September before coming to the Sacramento area in the middle of 1978. He maintained a 3-month hiatus before returning to the Bay Area. HBO would begin a 6-part dramatization of late crime journalist Michelle McNamara's efforts to uncover the cold case offender she dubbed the Golden State Killer the night before the plea hearing on a far larger and more lucrative stage. I'll Be Gone in the Dark, her novel, was published 2 months before DeAngelo was detained. The HBO show, like the name, is based on 36 banker boxes of evidence files taken away from an Orange County police evidence room by the writer, and several of the survivors are stunned. Janelle Cruz's sister publicly released a copy of HBO's note warning her of graphic imagery and material, while noting, "It's been very meaningful to connect with you." Jennifer Carroll was shocked to witness the nude, bloodied bodies of her father and stepmother, Lyman and Charlene Smith, and the shattered pieces of the fireplace log used to crush their skulls while watching HBO's teaser. McNamara received the crime scene images from the police as part of an open investigation file. "I'm concerned that anyone other than law enforcement got access to these materials," Carroll added. The HBO production reportedly included non-disclosure agreements with crime victims, paid interviews, and catering for a garden party that served as the setting for the series finale. Chris Pedretti, who was 15 when she was raped and tortured by someone known as the East Area Rapist in 1976, said the 2-year procession of arrests, criminal trials, and many news stories, podcasts, cable news shows, books, true crime conferences, and other spin-offs has been staggering. Some of the deceased's families have found a public voice. Pedretti, whose father formerly forbade disclosing her rape, has formed a secret Facebook community for sexual assault survivors. Carroll tracked the case's growth on a blog and a podcast, and she claims her 400 followers share her desire to see crime as more than entertainment. Jane Carson, a former Air Force officer, was the first of the East Area rape victims to go out publicly, and she wrote a book about her experience, encouraging other rape victims to disclose their attacks and seek help and counseling. Carson expressed concern about the plea hearings, citing the banks of media cameras and the big auditorium, and sitting masked and separated from her fellow survivors, to hear DeAngelo acknowledge raping her in 1976. "I wish it was just in a much smaller and more personal situation, because I want to hear him confess to his misdeeds," she stated. "It's going to be a complete circus. I'm glad it's over." Well, that's all we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.